Hey everyone, what's up? It's Ing, and we have a double billing today. We had earlier today Brett Littman from the Noguchi Museum, and now we're going to have from Chicago my dear Jeanette Andrews, who is going to talk to us about her practice, but also her experience during this time. So Jeanette, I'll have you on in a second. Hi, everyone who's joined. Hey, Gulnars, good to see you. I need to show you the framed work that your collector put up on their wall. I saw it the other day. But for those who are just joining, this is the Praise You chat, which I've been doing for about 3 weeks now. And there are these daily conversations with people in the creative world, in the art world, and then some beyond the art world. And they are just ways of getting a glimpse into life and the ways that we navigate COVID-19. I see this as like a little time capsule to what we're experiencing. And I love that so many people from around the world have joined in, have entered the conversation, and people have found each other as well. And that's really powerful. So I hope it continues, and I hope you guys enjoy this. Thank you so much. So without any further ado, this is Jeanette Andrews, and I'm going to put her on to join. And if you guys have any questions during this, feel free to put it in the chat, and then we'll try and get to it at the end. So Jeanette, when you're on, let me know. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. Good to see you. I actually haven't seen you, I realized. I think we've spoken, but this is great. Everyone give Jeanette a wave or throw up some hearts. So as a short introduction, Jeanette is an illusionist and also performance artist based in Chicago. And we met about 2 years ago almost at Mana Contemporary in Chicago, where I was working with them on some projects and you were a resident there.
Yeah.
And we started a conversation, and I honestly didn't really know where it would go because I'd never met anyone like you. I'd never met a magician who was also an artist. And we just started a dialogue and a conversation and have been working together where I work to help Jeanette create some opportunities and presentations. So we did something at the Ace Hotel March of last year, which was a awesome experience, sold out in about 5 seconds. Okay, 5 minutes. And that was a wonderful opportunity for people to see her work because previous to that, you were primarily a Chicago-based artist, right? You had shown at the MCA Chicago, museums all over. Anyway, and then I'll let you talk because I want to hear from you. But then we did a really great presentation with the Cooper Hewitt in December, where you did a workshop with and a talk with the curator, Emily Orr. So unfortunately, I haven't seen you in person in a few months since no one can travel right now. But it's really nice to connect with you here. And so for those who are not as familiar with your practice, can you tell them about your past and what you see yourself in terms of you as a performance artist with magic and illusion in your practice?
Yeah. So I've definitely had, a really wild ride in terms of, kind of the shape that my career has taken. So I started, doing magic, and I got interested in magic actually when I was 4 years old. And I did my first magic performance for my preschool class. And so, professionally, then I actually got paid to do a magic performance for the first time when I was 6. And this is the only profession I've ever had ever since. And so I grew up pretty squarely within sort of like the entertainment and theatrical world, and really kind of working within, being mentored by individual magicians and learning, pretty technical, stage and parlor magic. And so that was really my background. And then when I got it to probably about 12, I kind of went, I really feel like I kind of don't fit in with what's going on here. And a dear friend of mine to this day, Arthur Trace, those who are in LA please check him out. He's brilliant. But it just kind of mentioned to me, we were both backstage at a show, and kind of was like, you can use magic to express other ideas. And that was just this light.
I'm going to write this down.
Yeah.
You can use magic to express other ideas.
Yeah, it just, all of a sudden, it just changed my world. And then, I got really, after that, I got really interested in philosophy, and was just personally in high school reading a lot on aesthetics. And as I was doing that and was looking at how philosophers were framing their questions and ideas as it pertained to perception and epistemology and things like that, and they were framed within this context of visual art. And I went, okay, these are really the same sorts of questions that lie at the heart of magic as well. And why isn't this being really presented in this formal art context? It was just a really natural parallel to me. So that's when so that happened when I was about 15. And so that was sort of then the beginning of my essentially kind of life project of saying, okay, I'm going to try to, place magic in the context of the art world. And that's been what I've been doing ever since.
Incredible. Well, we're going to learn more about you. Here's my cup of tea to you. And I hope, so how is life in Chicago right now?
Interesting. I feel like, for me personally, March and April were my busiest, the way that this year happened to play out, were going to be my busiest scheduled performances and talks. So I was slated to do about 10 or 11 performances in New York, which were things that were just permanently canceled. There was not a possibility to postpone them, as well as a talk in Dallas and other things like that. So for me, it was just instantly, having just, the rug pulled out. Yeah. So, I feel like just now, after that initial shock of the last, month and a half or so, I feel like I'm just starting to kind of wrap my brain around what's going on. But, yeah.
So Chicago is, you're able to get outdoors a little bit, but for the most part, you're having a pretty typical experience, I would say, compared to other people in big cities, right? You're dealing with rents, you're dealing with the high cost of living, and you're dealing with a lot of work that has been canceled and just like stopped with no warning whatsoever. And we had a lot of conversations on the earlier side where there was the struggle that everyone has gone through of trying to navigate the government assistance programs. And do you want to talk about that a little bit and what that was like? Because I know it was very frustrating, and I'm sure there are people here that can relate.
Yeah, definitely. So, jumping back a little bit, my heart is breaking for everybody in New York right now. And, I've been really, over the last 2 years, I've been kind of dividing my time between Chicago and New York. So, I feel very fortunate in that I'm in Chicago right now because we have, a little bit or a lot of it calmer of a landscape here. But we are still dealing with a lot of those challenges. And I live, in the very urban, center of Chicago. In terms of, government, kind of how everything got rolled out, it's been really interesting. I pretty much spent the first, about 3 weeks all day, every day, kind of becoming my own de facto lawyer. I have a newfound respect for everybody, like Yayoi, who I know you had on weeks ago, and people are actually lawyers. I don't know how they do it. But, just trying to learn and navigate, the ever...
Speaking of Yayoi, she just joined.
Oh my gosh.
We were just talking about you, Yayoi. But we were talking about how difficult the process has been for individual artists who, perhaps, I think a lot of artists are used to applying for grants, used to applying for financial assistance, but this was just so different and it was so sudden.
It was so different. I think the it was very difficult to find information. And I'll be very transparent about my experience. I was trying to initially navigate unemployment here in Illinois, which they have been one of the slowest states on their uptake on that. And, kind of the advice of several people. I've been so wildly fortunate to be in touch with Yoy, who's been very helpful. Have also been in touch with a woman who's wonderful, Elaine from Minerva Financial Arts, who does art, bookkeeping and finances for artists. And so they've been invaluable resources. But I've been talking with a lot of people on sort of the just apply for everything mentality. And so just in full transparency, I did that. And what ended up coming through is, in an absolute moment of shock, I actually got a PPP loan.
Oh, good.
And
okay.
That was, I just was shocked. And I think a big part of that is, having a smaller, more local bank. A part of that was just some incredibly fortuitous timing. Part of that was the fact that a lot of the documentation I had already done prior to, because of applying for other things, and I am very familiar with the process of applying to grants. And so I think, having all of that just ready to go was really helpful.
Very helpful. Yeah.
The rollout aspect of it, for example, I was asking questions of, my banker, who is wonderful and really knowledgeable, and he was like, I don't know. We don't know. And so I think it's hard for everyone to navigate, because all of the institutions, whether it be the banks, unemployment, sometimes even SBA themselves, they themselves don't have information. So,
Right. I know. We were just on the phone with my accountant, who had just kept saying, like, I don't know, you'll have to call the state for information. So you created this art project that I want to tell people about. And for those who are just joining, this is Jeanette Andrews calling in from Chicago, where she is living, but also practicing as an illusionist and a performance artist. So Jeanette, you started this, one of the very early responses, I think, from the art world to the pandemic. And it was a way of experiencing magic, or a type of magic, but by telephone. And for those who don't know about it, please check it out. Jeanette will tell us more about it, but I encourage you afterwards to pick up your actual telephone and dial this number. So over to you, Jeanette.
Thanks. It played out in a really interesting way. So the piece is called Magic by Telephone, and it came together. It was actually a concept I had about 2 years ago. And, I have just stacks and stacks and boxes of notebooks. I'm a diehard pen and paper person, and, was looking at how, all these different sort of modes of communication and stuff like that. And there, in 1969, one of the first art exhibits, or it actually may have been the first major exhibit that the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago here did, was called Art by Telephone, in which artists from all different disciplines either conveyed their art via telephone. It was art where instructions were conveyed via telephone. It was even things that incorporated records. It was all sorts of things that kind of loosely was audio-based art, but it was really interesting. And so I'd always been really taken with that, and then found out that it was possible for anybody to get, basically a toll-free number, which I just didn't know prior to that. Like, this could be a thing. Wrote it. And then as soon as this all started happening, sort of my initial thoughts, were, okay, is there something, how do I contribute to this? I'm not, I'm not a medical researcher. I'm not a healthcare worker. As an artist, I feel like we're all having this conversation of, what do we do right now? How do we best contribute? And for me, was, the core of my work has always been, providing moments of thought, moments of conversation that are all kind of centered around, kind of reveling in wonder and the mysterious. And, so I feel like giving a moment of sort of stress relief for that was important. So basically, I'm very clear in saying it's not typical of my work, obviously, in terms of either content, because it's not really a proper piece of magic in my opinion. However, it kind of feels like a magic effect where people call into this toll-free number, which is 1-855 by magic, BYMAGIC, and then essentially you'll navigate a call menu. You're met with an auto attendant who gives you a myriad of options, and then you sort of navigate the call menu to perform pieces of magic in your own home with common everyday items where instructions are narrated to you. So that's
right. It was great. I think it was like week 1, really, because I was still with some immediate family that I haven't seen in a while. And I didn't have any cards, so we went with the option where it was just your hands.
Yeah.
And so you literally need nothing except your body and a telephone line. So I encourage everyone to do it because I love that it's steeped in art history and that you were recalling, an exhibition and also local to you. So that's great because you're paying tribute to an institution that has given you a lot of opportunities as well. So that was great. And then everyone is able to access it. You don't need a Wi-Fi connection. You just need your telephone. And then after you announced that, you got a ton of great press, which was beautiful. And I saw there were a couple other, poetry by telephone, which I had mentioned to you, and I've seen a couple other things, which were also beautiful tributes. But here's the thing, and we talked about this. You didn't want to, and I'm sure you still don't think you want to ask for any money for that service, for that artwork that you put out there in the world. It wasn't the right time. That was never your intention. At the same time, you're putting this work out there. I don't know how many hours it took you to put that together, but I'm sure it was quite a lot of time. This is a work of magic or a work of art that we are all getting for free. It's not funded by the city of Chicago. It's not funded by a grant. It's not funded by a foundation. That gives me it makes me feel really not I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, because as artists, so much of the labor is often considered free, right? From the constituents or from the public. And we all know that this was a time when a lot of, people weren't going to be buying tickets to do that. But people are now, I think, starting, this is now week 6-ish. So we are starting to look at, systems where even Instagram Live has a donate button for a nonprofit now, right? But, you can't do that. If you had an IG Live talk and you just wanted to get money in, that's not possible right now for yourself. I know Facebook is starting to implement buttons where to enter a live stream, you can pay, an admissions fee. But in general, right, artists like you are doing this work, this kind of labor, this practice without being compensated. Correct. Tell me about your thought process behind that, because I know you thought about it pretty deeply.
Yeah, I did put an immense amount of thought into that decision. And I'm really glad we're speaking about this. I think it's an important topic. And I know we just got a comment saying that, that I think it's Jennifer is happy that we're talking about this. And, for myself, yes, I put an extreme amount of time into that project. I was working pretty much round the clock, almost since, we started thinking there was going to be a shutdown until it got rolled out. And that was also with the caveat that it was something I had worked on prior, wasn't where it was I'm just going to whip this out in a week. I'd already done work and research on it. So then it was just trying to get it out as quickly as I can. For me, I also want to say one other thing, that the telephone service I'm using does have a cost associated with it to actually maintain that line. So when I first started talking about it with friends, there was a friend of a friend who found out about it and said, "Hey, I think this is a great idea. I want to cover and sponsor the cost of that support line." So she donated to cover 2 months of that. Of it.
Oh, great.
So, so that's so her and her family, sponsored that. That's really through the end of May. So that's just in terms of essentially the technical cost. For me personally, I think part of the decision of that was also coming from my own, of the lack of, paying for it, was coming from a place of my own experience, again, going back to the fact that, for myself, 40% of the performances I had scheduled in 2020 were for March and April. So I just saw the bottom fall out instantly. And I know that's the case for so many people that I personally know. I know it's the case for a lot of other people, now obviously we're seeing people even, with, more stable seeming jobs be even just concerned about pay cuts and things like that. So I know for, many people, I know the idea of affording anything is impossible right now, or certainly a few weeks ago. So to me, it was important to make something that was accessible. I feel like the only thing that I was able to contribute as a person and as an artist, was sort of this idea of this complete escapism and, indulgence in magic, and able to provide that to people at no cost for even just, 10 minutes to not be thinking about this. Important.
So that's good. That's good to know. I mean, and I also would put it out there that, like, if there are foundations or grants, I mean, and there are a lot out there right now, but your work is incredibly different from anybody else's that I know. And I would just encourage anyone who's interested in what Jeanette is doing to look into her work, because, you have pretty much created this career out of dust, like pixie dust probably. But, you have paved this path for yourself that didn't exist before. And like I said, in the beginning of this, when I met you, I had no idea what you even meant when you said I'm a magician and a performance artist. And I did have to see it for myself. And once I saw it for myself, I understood. But, magic is, it's a performance art. It's something that you personally have always done on a live basis, right? We're not able to find your performances on YouTube. You're not archiving them that way. Tell me more about your thought process originally, and whether that's changed now that everything is online.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a question I'm still navigating, because, most of the work that I have done, prior to this, is based on, obviously I'm coming from a technical tradition that's based on hundreds of years of extremely intricate psychology, and also a deep understanding of the visual process that quite is now, just within about the last 10 years, has been taken up by science, and is being utilized in a lot of research, and as a research mechanism to study both problem solving and optics. And so, magicians have had this just incredibly rich understanding of visual perception over, basically millennia of time. And, the eye and the brain function viewing things live completely differently than they do the brain. My work, I now have been doing this for over 25 years, and all of my work is built on this foundation of, hundreds of years of live based And then also for myself, the type of work that I kind of am very interested in and where my technical and specialty lies is all work that is based in basically like split second timing. And psychology is honestly so nuanced and so complex that I myself, as somebody where I eat, sleep, and breathe this basically every moment I have been alive, I feel like I barely even understand. So because it is so complex. So for me, you know, the idea of, you know, a lot of this just physically doesn't translate. You know,
you mean to video.
Exactly. And so one of the things I'm, you know, am starting to contemplate is, you had mentioned earlier, you know, the workshop that we and kind of artist talk that we had done collaboratively with the Smithsonian Museum, Cooper Hewitt. I think I saw Emily Orr jump on.
Yeah, Emily's on here. The curator from the Cooper Hewitt. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah. I hope Emily's still watching. She's one of my favorite people. But yeah, and so, you know, that was kind of structured around the idea of designing the impossible and using, you know, a lot of the sort of the ways that magicians think about approaching how to create a seemingly impossible outcome or scenario, and then using existing materials, strategies, things, and then totally reforming them into something else to then something impossible. So right now I'm kind of looking at, you know, is that is able to be translated online, and is this something will be, you know, because again, it's a workshop and it's really educational and informational as opposed to performative. So, you know, is this something there's an interest in and monetarily? So
no, it's a good question. And I think, oh my God, we're almost out of time.
Oh no,
that's crazy. That's crazy, because I wanted you, maybe you can very briefly talk to people, because I didn't know this, you know, tell people very briefly about the history of magic and how it was this, you know, powerful form of high art, you know, in the turn of the century.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, as a teenager, I got really interested in studying, you know, the history of magic, and thank God I did. Because if you had said to somebody, you know, 150 years ago, hey, you know, I'm going to be, you know, doing a chat with somebody who's a magician, that would have carried the same cultural weight of prestige or, you know, magic and hierarchy as if you had said, oh, I'm talking to somebody, you know, who's with the opera or the ballet. You know, magic was right up there in sort of this upper echelon and highbrow, you know, theatrical and performative art. And, it, you know, was really interesting and has new meaning now, is that we saw it over about a 40 or 50 year period have this massive fall from grace, and then kind of move to something that was this very kind of considered this very, you know, low art essentially. And so as part of my kind of recontextualizing it in the art world, kind of went, okay, we need to bring it back up to that status. What's really interesting is why part of it suffered that fall was mainly, you know, kind of socioeconomic and mainly economic reasons pertaining to the rise of the film industry, and then the rise and fall of vaudeville, and then also subsequently the Great Depression. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking a lot about that, and a lot of sort of of course, the mirror in what we're seeing.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. When you told me that it was, you know, tantamount to going to the opera or the ballet, you know, I had no idea, because I had just hired a magician for my daughter's 8th birthday. And, you know, and I love magicians, and I love the thrill of seeing a great magic trick, but to think of it as, you know, this theatrical performance, and of course then, you know, we know the movies like The Prestige, and, you know, that brought it back. But I think it's really important to look at the cycle of, you know, art forms and why and when people bring them, you know, why and when they're considered high art, low art. My friend Andrew Whitfield, who was on a few days ago from the Minnesota Opera, was talking about opera kind of disappearing during World War II, and that it was after the war that it really came back. And so art forms can go away, but unless people completely forget about them, they don't disappear, and they can be reinvigorated.
Right.
Well, I can't believe that was 30 minutes because that went by so incredibly fast. But and I'm sorry I didn't get to anyone's questions, but I just encourage all of you to look at Jeanette's practice and definitely do Magic by Telephone 855 by Magic.
Yes, that's
right. Okay.
BY.
855 by Magic, BY Magic, and do it with your family, do it with your kids. It's like 5 minutes, and it's just such a nice change to your day. And yeah, I hope we can see you live really soon, Jeanette. I'm so sorry everything came to a screeching halt, but I'm sure sooner or later it will come back.
We're all same boat, so yeah.
Yeah, but I also think this is it's kind of a reckoning where people are looking at, how they create their art and how their audiences, relate to them. So I'm sure you'll come out of this with some really interesting ideas. But I thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and to us. And this will be up on the stories for 24 hours and then archived. So thank you, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow.
2 seconds and just say, for everybody who's watching who's not familiar with Ing is just an absolute angel and has been one of my favorite people in my life. And for everybody, obviously follow what she's doing, follow that.
Well, thank you. And I wouldn't have what I do without artists like you. So it all goes hand in hand. And I think at the, most basic level, my feeling is artists are essential. We are not looking to, create medicines or, cure disease, but they are essential. So that's why I do the work I do. But thank you. All right, everyone. It's been awesome. I hope everyone has a good Saturday, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.